Am I wrong for telling my sister her rainbow baby isn't special? I, 27 female, have a set of twins, Ben and Betty. They just turned 6. My sister, 32 female, has Connor, who is 4. My sister and her husband lost their first baby due to SIDS. It was devastating for the whole family, and I was behind my sister 100% of the way. I couldn't imagine what it was like. Anyway, when she found out she was pregnant with Connor, we were all excited. The pregnancy went well, and Connor got a good bill of health. I love my sister and I love my nephew, but my sister is convinced that because he's her rainbow baby, that means he can do whatever he wants. Connor is incredibly spoiled and a brat. He throws fits to get his way, hits, kicks, cries, whatever it takes. My sister and her husband give him no discipline. He's their rainbow baby, so that is their excuse for his bad behavior. Their lives are to serve for whatever Connor wants. My twins just turned 6 and we had a small party for them. Everyone was having a good time except for Connor. He wanted cake, didn't like the games, wanted to watch TV, wanted ice cream now, didn't want other kids to touch him, and etc. Basically, the whole party, Connor threw a tantrum. The final straw came at present time. My husband went to get the gifts out of the living room only to find Connor had ripped nearly all of them open. My sister made excuses, saying he was just excited and wanted to play with my kids' new toys. I lost it. I told her that Connor isn't special, that he's a brat and he's been ruining the party since he got here. My sister immediately went on that he's her rainbow baby and he didn't mean it and maybe I should have put the presents where he couldn't get to them. They were in the living room and the party was outside. No one was inside. I lost my temper. I know I did. This was my kid's party though. I said some nasty things to her. I told her that Connor isn't a baby anymore and he's not special and she's raising a self-centered party. My husband and the guests who were at the party are on my side. My sister hasn't really spoken to me in a few days, just posted passive-aggressive things on social media, which I just blocked. So, am I wrong here?
Of all the crazy headlines that go up about Mr. Kanye West, I will always have a soft spot for him. I genuinely think he's a good dude, and that's because of a personal experience I had with him. I used to be a backup dancer for Mr. Kanye West many, many years ago. It was when he came to Australia for the Splendor in the Grass show, and he came to town and he hired like 20 Australian girls to be his ballerinas. Now, one night after the show, we went back to his penthouse, all of us dancers and his crew, and we went for the after party. A bunch of us were out on the veranda, so there was like Kanye, the 2 ballerinas that he traveled with, the female ballerinas that he traveled with, and then he had like a bit of a posse that came around and traveled with him. Kanye was inside on his laptop, I don't know, doing something, and a bunch of us were out on the veranda, we were like dancing and drinking and all this sort of stuff. Now, we were all sitting around and a bunch of the guys that were like Kanye's little posse were like standing around and they were like dancing and twerking and they're like, blah, 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 join in. And I was like, oh no, I'm okay. I'm just sitting here. I'm just relaxing, just chilling. And out of all the girls, I think I was probably the thickest, right? So I don't know, I'm generalizing here, but I think the Americans liked thick girls and they like were honing in on me. They were like, come on, dance, twerk, come on, get up, twerk, blah, blah, blah. And they were like full on shaking their bum, like trying to like get me to do what they wanted to do. And there was one of Kanye's dancers, she was like grinding on one of the guys and I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. And they were all like, it was a lot of pressure. Like I could feel the walls closing in on me. I felt really, really uncomfortable. I kept saying no and they were like, come on, come on, come on. And I kept saying no and they kept coming in. And I was getting to this point where I was like, I feel really unsafe here. Like there was a bunch of really intimidating dudes like honing in on me, asking me to like dance and stuff. And then out of nowhere, Kanye literally like burst through them and was like, bro, she said no. And I was like, whoa. And he was like, she said no, so stop asking her to do it, all right? And they were like, okay, sorry, bro. And they like backed up and he like came and sat next to me and he was like, look, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Like they're just being dicks. Like you don't have to do anything. Just have fun chilling. And I was like, oh my God. Like in that moment, I felt really, really unsafe. Like there was a bunch of guys asking me to do something that I didn't want to do. And Kanye told them to back off. So like of all the things that I see about him, at the crux of it all, I think he's a good dude. Maybe he does some crazy shit, but I will always have a soft spot for you. Yay.
It was never easy to have everyone know what I was feeling, but it got even worse when Dad started working as a janitor at a posh private high school and I got enrolled for free. But Dad, I don't think I'll fit in. They're all probably billionaires, and they'll just turn up their noses at me when they find out you work there. I don't want you to tell anyone that I'm your dad, okay? I don't want anything to be harder for you, and you're just as smart and deserving as any kid out there, so don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. But as expected, school was a nightmare. On my first day, the school queen, Ashley, and her gang immediately noticed me. Their eyes were scanning me up and down, and it was really freaking me out. You're pretty, but do you own a private island? Oh, is that a requirement here? Not really, but everyone here is rich, so I'm just checking which richness level you belong to. I felt so annoyed. I turned as red as her lipstick, but they thought I was just embarrassed. Aw, you're blushing. Don't worry, I'm the only one who has a private island. But at least tell me you have a private jet? One of her minions butted in. I don't think she does, Ash. Look at that cheap secondhand bag from Walmart. Ashley looked horrified. Like I had bugs crawling all over me. Yes, of course I do. Who doesn't have a jet these days? She narrowed her eyes, so I backed it up. I came in the limo because the jet has gone for maintenance. Just then, I saw my dad mopping the floor nearby, and even though he was poker-faced, I'm pretty sure he'd heard me. Boring! But since you're pretty, you can join our gorgeous gang. We'll make your school experience beautiful like me. Suddenly, someone whispered, "Good luck." I turned around and instantly started blushing. Oh my! He was the cutest guy I'd ever seen. Hi, I'm Julian. He held out his hand, and I could feel the blush spread down my neck and chest. Ew! Why are you so red? You look like a stupid tomato. Forget about the gorgeous gang. I don't want to freak with us. She's probably simping hard on Julian. Well, Julian is only available for me, right, babe? Come on, Ashley. How many times do I have to tell you that we're not together? Yeah, I hear you. Babe. I was so relieved to hear that Julian didn't like Ashley, but I was sure it was becoming way too obvious to him that I was crushing hard. So I excused myself and ran away. I knew I'd have to avoid him, but that wasn't easy when we had all our classes together. And during chemistry, he sat down next to me. Just then, the teacher started demonstrating sugar dehydration and asked us why sugars turned into black toothpaste after sulfuric acid is added. Everyone looked at her like she'd spoken Chinese, but I knew the answer. Because the sulfuric acid removes water from the sugar, releasing heat, steam, and sulfur oxide fumes. It also smells like caramel. Everyone looked uber impressed. Just then, Julian scooted closer to me and whispered, "I didn't know your brain is as pretty as your face." Immediately, I turned horribly red. Ew, what's wrong with you? Is that thing infectious? Julian moved away immediately, and I could see the girls snickering. What a total jerk. My blushing disease wasn't the only thing that was ruining things at school. It wasn't long before Ashley realized I'd never worn anything that screamed $1 million. One day in the canteen, she suddenly came up to me and knocked my lunch tray off the table. "I've been watching you go to school every day and you're just walking." I instantly turned red, totally furious. Before I could attack her, Dad was suddenly by my side. "That's an awful thing to do to a new student, miss." Ashley looked like she was about to explode. "Excuse you? Who are you, her dad? Just do your job, you stupid janitor. And that's to clean up our mess. Here's some more for you." And with that, Ashley suddenly kicked the cart and spilled all the chemicals and trash onto the floor. "Do your work properly or I'll tell my parents. They can easily get you kicked out of here." How dare she treat my dad like that? That's not how you should treat janitors, Ashley. They work really hard to make sure the school is nice and clean for us. In fact, you shouldn't be allowed to speak like this to anyone. Aw, so am I supposed to cry and hug him for giving me his lame opinion? No, but you're supposed to treat hardworking people with respect. Imagine how you'd feel if someone treated you that way. And why do I need to imagine that? I'm pretty rich. I'm never going to be a janitor. I'm going to be sitting in a nice big office one day running Daddy's business. The principal, Ms. Sheldon, suddenly arrived and asked what was going on. Ashley immediately transformed into an angel. "Oh, nothing. The janitor just spilled his stuff and I was helping him." She's lying. She kicked his things on purpose and was being horrible to him. I was sure Ms. Sheldon was going to tell her off, but she just looked uncomfortable and told everyone to go to their classes. I was so angry that she didn't stand up for Dad. Just because Ashley's rich parents gave a lot of donations to the school. That night, Dad surprised me with a beautiful birthday cake. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I'd completely forgotten I was turning 17 today. Thank you, Dad. I'm really sorry about how horrible Ashley was to you. I wish I could just punch her in the face. Even the principal didn't do anything. I'm sure she didn't have a choice, honey. She can't afford to make someone like Ashley's parents angry. But that's so unfair. Well, I'm sure when you're rich one day, you'll treat people around you much better. Now don't worry about it anymore and open your gifts. I was shocked to see some branded bags, shoes, and clothes. How did you afford these? I had some money saved up. This will hopefully get those girls off your back for a while. I hugged him and promised myself that someday I was going to spoil him and make him proud. But a few months later, my world turned upside down when he suffered from a heart attack and fell into a coma. I didn't know what to do. And how was I going to pay the hospital bills? When I told the principal, I broke down into tears and she comforted me. "You don't have to worry about anything, Nina. I'll talk to the school board and we'll still keep you in school free of charge." "That's really kind of you, but I have another favor to ask. Please hire me in Dad's place. I really need his salary." "Nina, I'm not sure you want to work here. Maybe I could lend you some money?" "Thank you, Miss Sheldon, but I'd rather work for it, please." She was hesitant, but eventually agreed to hire me. And she was generous enough to double Dad's salary. When Ashley saw me in my uniform for the first time, she cackled with delight. "I knew it. You're the janitor's daughter. It's a shame to have a poor freak like you here in my school. The only thing that's a shame is that there are people like you in the world. Now please get out of my way." In between classes, I'd mop the floor and clean everyone's trash, and whenever I did, she'd be there to mock me. One time she peeled a banana and threw the peel right at my face. Oops, sorry. I mistook your face for a trash can. One day we were in the middle of an exam and she excused herself to go to the bathroom. When she came back, she complained that the toilet was clogged and I needed to go fix it. But I'm still answering my exam. You're the janitor here, right? Do your work now. I was furious when I checked it. She purposely stuffed a lot of tissue paper in the toilet. And even worse, she'd written the worst possible things on the bathroom walls. The next time Ashley complained about the clogged toilet, I finally spoke up. Ugh, how long should I suffer from your constipation, Ashley? I'm dying from the smell. She was surprised with my comeback and looked furious when others laughed. I didn't poop, dummy. Then why is the toilet always clogged? It was now her turn to blush and walk out. In your face, you stupid witch. One day when I was in the janitor's closet, I was surprised to see a boy coming in with a paper bag on his head. But I knew exactly who he was. Julian, why are you wearing that? Because you blush hard every time you see my handsome face? Oh, wow. Not only was he a little jerk, but he was also really full of himself. He got rid of the paper bag and held my hand. Surprisingly, I felt nothing. Listen, what you did with Ashley a while ago was so cool. It was the first time someone stood up to her and I'm impressed. Do you want to hang out sometime? I was about to say no when suddenly he leaned in for a kiss. I was blushing now, but in panic. Before our lips touched, the closet was suddenly opened by a super jealous Ashley. You're gonna pay for hitting on my future boyfriend, Nina. You'll see. One evening when I was studying for a big test, the principal called me. I'm really sorry, Nina, but the jocks and the cheerleaders had a big party at the gym, and we need the place clean for an assembly tomorrow morning. It shouldn't take too long. But when I got to school, I realized to my horror that not just the gym, but the whole school was a total mess. There was trash everywhere and stuff written on the walls. All the toilets were also clogged with tissue paper. Of course, I knew the culprit. I had to finally teach Ashley a lesson. I took pictures of all the mess. Then I went to her locker and opened it up using a hairpin. I grinned when I saw what was in there. There was still a room for a few things, so I took out the tissue papers from all the toilets and stuffed them in her precious locker. Perfect! Then an idea came to mind. I sneaked into the laboratory and mixed up a few chemicals together. I put my formula on a sponge and wiped it across the wall. The ink came off instantly. I sat down to rest for a while, and I just fell asleep there. The next morning, I woke up to everyone gathered around me, and Ashley was screaming. That freak ruined my locker. She did it. What's all this commotion? The principal walked into the scene, and I jumped to my feet as Ashley screamed about her locker. It's true I did that, Miss Sheldon. But look at what she and her minions did to the school before the scene, and I jumped to my feet as Ashley screamed about her locker. It's true I did that, Miss Sheldon. But look at what she and her minions did to the school before I cleaned it all up. Miss Sheldon looked horrified to see the pictures on my phone. She turned angrily to Ashley. Ashley, you have no respect for the people who work here, or for the school property. If you think I will keep tolerating such behavior, you are very much mistaken. Miss Sheldon, you know who my parents are, right? Yes, I do, and I will be calling them right now. I'm going to talk to the school board about having you expelled. Everyone around us erupted into cheers as Ms. Sheldon and a very furious Ashley walked into her office. She had been bullying everyone way too long. Long story short, Ashley was expelled, and even her minions were suspended. I was about to graduate high school in a few months, and I kept thinking about the formula that I tried in the school lab. I continued testing it at home, and after a few weeks, I felt I'd really perfected it. I set up a website and put up a small video of me cleaning the toughest stains with my invention. And to my surprise, it went viral. I had orders pouring in so fast, I was working day and night to meet the demand. 2 weeks later, an investor contacted me. And fast forward to a couple more months, I was earning millions. I transferred Dad to a better hospital, and just a month later, he finally woke up. I told him everything that happened, and he hugged me tight. I'm so proud of you, Nina. I went off to college, but Dad and I continued my business together and moved into a mansion. We supply our invention to a lot of schools for free to make the jobs of janitors easier everywhere. Oh, and I also found out that my condition could be easily fixed by a small surgery, and I could certainly afford it now. Finally, I could keep...
I'm 28 and babysit on the weekends to make some extra cash. There's this one family that I should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute and I don't have another job, so it's easy money. My issue is, the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but I finally started asking as it made it impossible for me to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could have brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her that she needed to be home on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Still nothing. I was still calling and texting. Finally, it's midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined, but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying that if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also texted her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on red. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, and finally called the cops. The non-emergency line though. They showed up and I showed our agreement in text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I'm awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I told her that I followed through with my threat and to check the police station. She cursed me out and I hung up and went to bed. The next day, she sends me an essay saying the kid's father called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my client?
Storytime about how I'm hooking up with my boss's husband. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I'm a homewrecker. Am I proud of it? No, but just hear me out. A few years ago, I had moved to a new city and didn't have any friends at all. My goal was to get a job and make some new friends. Luckily, I got a job right away. After working there for a few weeks, I noticed that my boss would get really jealous anytime her husband would come into the store. Here's the reason why. Her husband is super attractive. He's like way more attractive than she is. Anyway, there were a bunch of girls that worked at the store. I wasn't the only one. But it was like some kind of unspoken rule that you never spoke to the boss's husband. After a month of working there, I would avoid him at all cost. But here's the thing. He actually would go out of his way to come say hi to me. At first, I thought this was flattering, but then I realized I could be playing with fire. So I decided to be really cold towards him. Well, this didn't work because it actually made him want to talk to me even more. A few days later, I get a text from an unknown number. Can you guess who it is? Yep, it's my boss's husband. In the message, he basically said that if he had done anything wrong to let him know because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable around him. That's when I told him that none of the girls at the store were allowed to talk to him or even make eye contact with him. And that was the reason why I didn't speak to him. He told me that I must have misunderstood because he's friends with all of the girls who work there, which I knew was not true. The next day I go into work and he actually shows up at lunchtime. I was by myself at the store. It's like he almost knew that I was there by myself, so he decided to come over. And he started flirting. He pretty much complimented everything about me and asked me if I was making friends. Then he asked me for permission to follow me on Instagram. Of course, I was like, yeah, you can follow me. After that, we basically talked on Instagram almost every single day. He would watch and reply to all of my stories. One time I posted a story of me having dinner with some guy, and he replied right away and asked me if I was on a date. I said yes. Then he told me that he was actually jealous. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said LOL. Then he said, what are we gonna do about this? I told him probably nothing because his wife would get upset. Then he said, I've got my ways, don't worry. He asked me to go to the movies and we went, and we basically made out the entire time. After the movie, we sat in his car and he told me that he hated his wife and that he was planning on divorcing her. He was even crying. I mean, I had to believe him. He asked me to keep everything secret, and of course I said yes. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. This went on for 2 months. One day he calls me and tells me that his wife actually read our messages. My boss's husband, aka the guy I'm having an affair with, he calls me up to tell me that she actually saw the text messages between us. Luckily, he did not save my number under my name. So basically, she saw messages between him and some other girl. He was really freaking out. But that's when I told him this is your way out. According to him, he hated his wife. So I told him this is perfect, just ask her for a divorce. That's when he told me there was no way he would ever divorce her. He told me that she was the only one who made money in the relationship and that if they ever got divorced, she would leave him nothing. He also told me that he was no longer attracted to her, but that the money was just too good and he had to stay in the relationship. At that point, I started feeling really bad. I was under the impression that he absolutely hated her and that she was terrible towards him, but apparently not. Thankfully, she didn't know it was me the one that was messaging him. He actually made up a lie and told her it was some girl from Instagram that he met. When I showed up to work later that day, my boss was in a really bad mood, and I knew why. Suddenly, she tells all of us girls to pull out our phones and open our text messages. My stomach dropped because stupid me had not deleted all the messages. She started going one by one checking everyone's phone. But luckily, I was able to delete everything by the time she got to mine. That's when she told us all to go home. As soon as I got in my car, I decided to call him. I told him what had happened and he told me that everything should be under control and that she believes what he said. He asked me if we could meet up and I said yes. I just couldn't resist the temptation. A few days later, I came into work early by mistake. I find him talking to one of the other girls. When he saw me, he literally backed away from her. I instantly got upset and realized that he had probably been having affairs with a bunch of the other girls. I decided to confront the girl that he was talking to and she told me the truth. They had been having an affair for a year now and that he had probably had affairs with all the girls that worked there. No wonder my boss was so paranoid. When I asked him about it, he totally denied it. I kind of want to tell my boss now and just confess everything, but I'd risk losing my job, which pays really well and I actually love. I'm hoping you guys can tell me what to do. Help me.
This is why you should be careful who you befriend. When I was in junior high, I was a friendly and curious person. 1 month into the fall semester, we got a new transfer student. He was seated behind me and his name was Joe. I introduced myself to him, trying to ease the tension. I showed him what we learned so far and helped him to look over his class schedule. We had 2 classes and lunch together. Naturally, we got to know each other and became friends. He was a quiet kid but talked a lot around me, so I assumed he was just comfortable with me. I made it clear to him that we were just friends and he agreed, so I brought him around my friends and we all started to hang out. Fast forward to spring break, I told Joe that I was going out of town with my family. He seemed disappointed we couldn't spend spring break together but understood. However, while on spring break, I ran into Joe at a restaurant. I didn't tell him where I was going, so I thought to myself, wow, what a coincidence. He said he was visiting family in the same town and I believed him. Then in senior year, Joe and I were hanging out at least 3 times a week. I noticed it was too much and I wanted to make time for my other friends as well. That's when things started to change. I ran into Joe, or should I say saw him in the corner of my eye when I spent time with someone else over myself. He started to become obsessive and clingy. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. However, it all became clear when I questioned him and he said that he accidentally followed me. Once I questioned Joe, he confessed saying that it was because he wanted to make sure I was safe. I felt betrayed and creeped out. He apologized and asked for forgiveness. I told him I didn't want to be friends with him anymore. That's when he got angry and left. The next 2 to 3 days, he didn't come to school. My friends told me that he harassed him for snitching on him. When he came back to school, we pretended like we didn't know each other. On my walk home that day, I heard Joe calling my name in a low and unfamiliar tone, but he was nowhere to be seen. I don't know why, but my gut told me to run as fast as I could. I listened to it and sprinted all the way home. I made sure every door and window was locked. I was convinced that I was being paranoid at this point. Then my phone screen lit up. I looked to see many missed calls from Joe. Then I heard my name being called again. I looked up to see Joe in the front of my house, banging on the door. Everything went completely silent after 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. The last words I heard from him was, "You'll always be my best friend." This issue was brought up to the school and Joe never showed up again. 4 years have passed since then, and just a few days ago, I got a couple friend requests on my social media accounts. It was him. I blocked him and changed all my social media names into something else. I don't live in that same town anymore, or even the same country. However, I can't help but to feel like the scared 18-year-old me again. I'm not the friendly person I once was, and I've become cautious around other people.
This is why you should always breathe through your nose. In 2009, a Russian man named Artyom Sidorkin started experiencing intense chest pains to the point where he couldn't even stand up. He tried to ignore it, but when he started coughing up blood, he went to the emergency room. They gave him an x-ray, and it revealed a fist-sized tumor growing in his lung. Afterwards, the doctor told Mr. Sidorkin, unfortunately, it looks like cancer. But before they could start removing large chunks of his lung, the doctor needed to do a biopsy to see if it really was cancer. So a terrified Mr. Sidorkin came in a few days later. They performed the biopsy, and the surgeon, as he was looking at the tissue, noticed something. Tucked in the middle of the tissue was a 5-centimeter long fir tree. Mr. Sidorkin was a botanist, and he was a big mouth breather, and at some point while he was working, he managed to inhale a fir tree seed. The doctors told him he didn't have cancer, he had a tree. He was shocked, and he said, "I had no sense that a tree was growing in my lungs." But more than shocked, he was just happy to be cancer-free.
Am I the asshole for making my germaphobe husband change our baby's diaper? My husband and I have a 2-month-old together. He does everything almost except changing diapers. He's a hardcore germaphobe, so I handle the dirty part of our son's care. So my husband's been pestering me about the faces I make when changing our son's diapers, telling me to smile all the time. I told him to leave me alone, and it's easy for him to say when he's not the one dealing with the smell. But every time I'm in the middle of changing diapers, my husband would show up out of nowhere like he busted me or something and tell me that the faces I keep making have an impact on our son's emotional state and I should smile. I told him to leave me alone. He knows how difficult this is for me but does nothing to help. Instead, just mocks me and keeps pestering me. I said if he ever tries to hassle me again with just smile bullcrap, then he'll start handling the diaper changes himself. Last night around 9, he was in the kitchen already eating dinner without me and not waiting while I was getting ready to change my son's diaper. He came into the room with his mouth full of food and once again commented on how my face looked and for me to smile and show love and to stop causing harm to our son's emotional health. I snapped. I walked up to him and told him that he ran out of chance to stop his annoying behavior and he should start handling diaper changes from now on and we'll see how big his smile will be. His tone changed immediately and he said that we both agreed that I'd be the one handling diaper changes even before our son was born and that I already know too well what his reason is. He's a germaphobe, yes, but he's also a parent. What type of parent never changes their baby's diaper? I handed him the stuff and asked him to enjoy it while I kept standing to watch how he would do it. It took him forever. As I expected, I made all types of disgusted, gross-out faces, and for a minute, I thought he was going to throw up. When he was finished, I told him he lost the smiling contest with those faces he made. He was pissed and rushed to wash his hands, complaining about how I'm trying to get him to do everything, and that I ruined his appetite by having him experience that. I replied and said he hasn't seen anything yet, and asked since he wants us to have 4 kids, how he will be handling the other 3. He said he changed his mind and only wants 2. But still, my point stands. He tried to argue that I'm not taking his germophobia seriously, and what I forced him to do wasn't cool. He's been upset since then and has given me the silent treatment. So, am I the asshole?
Someone thought they were actually going to shame me about something, about a choice. I don't have any shame. And there's multiple reasons, but there's a main reason. My right ear, I don't hear as well out of it as I do my left ear. And that's because in high school, there was a circumstance which ended up with another gal's thighs against my head. And through the same circumstances, they were kind of wet. They had moisture on them. But also in that circumstance, something took place that caused a very rapid squeezing and a moving, and it actually damaged my eardrum on that side. The song she was playing was Fight for All the Wrong Reasons by Nickelback. So I have no shame, because the last thing that I heard on this earth with perfect clarity was a fucking Nickelback song. So I'll be damned if you try to say something to me about being an accountant.
So you know when you're doing your business with your girlfriend and you clean up? One time I forgot to and it ended up horribly. So me and my girlfriend were going to see a movie one night and when we got there the ads were still playing. So she decided that she wanted to go to the bathroom and yeah. And I'm an adrenaline junkie for that kind of stuff in public so I couldn't turn it down. But in the bathroom we could still hear the echo from the movie. And once we got finished we had noticed that it already started. We were in such a rush that her and I both forgot to clean up. So we get into the movie theater and it is absolutely packed. And it took me a couple of minutes to find a seat. A singular seat left, meaning she had to sit on my lap. And everything was pretty normal throughout the movie until it was over. They turned on the lights as the movie was ending and we decided to leave. Well, my girl was wearing a skirt. I looked down at my pants as I got up to leave and I noticed that there was stuff all over me. And I knew what it was. And when I look up, everyone is looking at me and laughing. And as me and my girl are leaving the theater, a group of girls and guys come up to us. What they did embarrassed me for life. Like and follow for part 2. Part 2 is up right now. Just click the link in my bio and download the app. Then search up my name and it's the first thing that pops up. The story title is Movies Part 2. But it's a different title in the actual video. Anyway, I post all my part 2s early on that app because I honestly just like it better. As well as stories that I don't post on here and other exclusive content. It's a social networking app where you can talk to other people and watch streamers while you're there. It's super cool. But if you don't feel like doing that, don't worry, part 2 will be up on TikTok tomorrow. Thanks you guys, I love you and I hope you have a great day.
This is why you should never eat a cult's applesauce. During his stay in a psych ward in the 1970s, Marshall Applewhite formed an intense, non-romantic relationship with his nurse, Bonnie Nettles. They quickly realized aliens had preordained their encounter, and now they needed to board their spacecraft once the aliens came back to Earth to give them the signal. The pair formed a cult called Heaven's Gate, and they recruited people by telling them if they missed this one UFO ride, they would be destroyed when the Earth was inevitably recycled. Their cult was considered a joke and not a threat until they did something so horrific it shocked the world. On March 26, 1997, the aliens were going to be passing overhead, hiding behind a comet, and it was now time for the members to hop on board. Over the course of 3 days, members donned matching Nike sneakers, ate poisoned applesauce, tied bags over their head, and then waited to exit the Earth. Right before they died, they conducted exit interviews, and they are truly disturbing. To see these interviews and learn more about the cult of cults, check out Heaven's Gate on HBO Max, link is in my bio. This is why you should never step foot on the faraway dock. In 1994, an 11-year-old named Mark arrived at summer camp and made his way over to the dining hall where the director was going to talk about the next couple of weeks. The director emphasized that no one was allowed to swim out to the dock located way out in the middle of the lake, although she didn't say why. Mark and the 3 other boys in his cabin were so intrigued by this faraway dock that the next day during lunch, while everyone was eating, they hopped in the lake and started swimming out. When they finally got out to the dock, they were a little bit let down because it looked like any other dock. But they decide to make the best of it, they climb on top and they start playing the game where they all stand on one side until it floods, last one to fall off wins. As the corner sank, they started to hear a scratching sound coming from underneath the dock. Suddenly, hundreds of these big meaty spiders come crawling out through the breaks in the wood and slide down the slanted dock towards the boys who panic and fall forward and there's spiders swarming their hair and their face. Turns out the dock was off limits because it was overrun with dock spiders and the boys flooded their nest.